Welcome to another episode of Everything Intellectual Property. Today, we have a very special guest with us. This person has created an innovative tool that offers a complete solution to clasp bracelet attachment. Please help me welcome the CEO and the founder of Clasp Magic, Alison Brett. Today with you, just kind of tell your story because it's a heck of a story. But I guess first, and I know you had a product, I think, with you. I always like to see if the guests can maybe kind of describe their product just so that the viewers can get an understanding of kind of what is going on here.
Right, sure. So this is my product, Clasp Magic. It's designed to fit on a surface, a flat surface, a desk, a dresser, and for travel as well, because you can see inside we have a storage compartment. And what it does is it secures the clasp in an open position to facilitate easy bracelet attachment. So the hardest part of independent bracelet attachment is trying to hold the clasp open by yourself. And as you can see, Clasp Magic holds the clasp open for you. You can see that.
Nice.
Great.
Nice.
So then you just place your wrist, drop the loop end in, and release. Right.
Nice. No, that's pretty cool. And I was noticing as I was kind of preparing for this, the fact that you have different slots with the part that holds. So depending on the size of the jewelry or the bracelet, you can accommodate different size bracelets, which I thought that was cool.
Well, right. And this was the original bracelet that caused the challenge for me. You can see just how small it is. I mean, who can even open this? So the different slots are for different sizes and different shapes. You have the traditional lobster clasp, and then there's rectangular lobster clasps and ring clasps. So we have the device that will secure all of these clasps open for you so that you can just drop the loop end in and release.
Go from there. Well, it's pretty cool for me to get a chance to have these interviews because I get a chance to learn a ton about different things. Obviously, I know about a bracelet and that you have to attach the bracelet, but I didn't know that, okay, this is a clasp and then you have a lobster clasp. I'm learning all this stuff as I go, and I was just blown away because I didn't know that this stuff, it was detailed in that way. I just thought you had to loop, you have to open in, and you kind of put it around your wrist and you lock it in place. But I didn't know, again, the terminology, which, like I said, is always fascinating me because I get a chance to learn a lot of different things. So, again, I know this was, and we'll get off into the inspiration of the product, but can men use it as well? Because I know a lot of times, more times than not, it's going to be used by women. But I would imagine that men still, they place or hook them or fasten bracelets or wear bracelets. So I would imagine that this have some applicability to men as well.
For sure. As long as the clasp, as long as it doesn't get too big. I've seen a few men's clasps that are quite jumbo, and at this time, Clasp Magic doesn't accommodate jumbo lobster clasps, but the majority of clasps, yes, it would help men as well.
Nice. Yeah, I was going to say, as I was thinking about that while asking that question, I know typically the men have like the bigger bracelets on, which I guess makes it more interesting. So what about, I guess, the inspiration for the product? Because it's always fascinating kind of asking and kind of learning from the guests about the inspiration, because it's typically, I think you had maybe hinted at it earlier, you're trying to actually solve a real life problem that you were going through yourself and was able to maybe figure it out with the product and kind of take further steps to get this product out to more people. So can you maybe talk a little bit about the inspiration of the product?
Sure. Thanks for asking. So I was a teacher before I started my family, and I went to Singapore. I taught internationally for a couple of years.
Really?
Then, I was teaching at the Canadian International School, and I had then finished my 2-year contract, and I was moving next actually to Zurich, Switzerland to teach. As a little treat or reward for myself, I bought myself 2, they were Tiffany & Co. bracelets, okay? The trending, tiny, little clasp, little beads, silver beaded bracelets. And fast forward to my first few days in Switzerland, and I'm attending a new employee work function. Okay, so obviously I'm trying to make a really good first impression, and I get myself ready and I grab my 2 bracelets and I think, oh gosh, well, I'll just find someone at the event who will put them on for me. So there I go. I find the first friendly looking face and I approach her and say, hi, would you be able to put my bracelets on for me? And sure, she definitely helped. And in that moment, however, I felt so childish and silly. I just moved to a brand new country. I knew no one. I didn't speak the language, and I was confident that I could handle that. But I couldn't put on this tiny bracelet by myself. And it did feel like a child asking, can you tie my shoelace? So in that moment, I had, I guess, a snapshot of what my product would look like. I knew it would look almost similar, I guess you could say, to a desktop tape dispenser. It would be sturdy. And I knew that I was working with the clasp end because that was the fiddly, finicky part. And so that was my inspiration. So, a moment of frustration and not being able to be as independent as I wanted to be.
So what was the timeline between that initial, okay, I need someone to help me in another country to put on my bracelet until, okay, I'm actually going to go full throttle with this thing and actually try to get it out into the market?
Sure. So that was my first year international teaching in Switzerland. Okay. I was quite busy. I met my husband there actually, and actually we got married. I had my first child in Switzerland. Then we decided we were going to come back to Canada, where I'm from, where my family was. And actually I had 2 more children. And then fast forward even further, it was the day I found out I was expecting my 4th child that I thought, you know what? If I don't do this now, I'm never going to have more time than I do now because I will always have 4 children, right? So, and all this time had passed, and every day I thought about my idea. And it's honestly, I would describe it in those early days as like a parasite. It would eat away at me. And I knew, I'm like, someone's going to do it before you. Someone's going to get that solution out there. And it would kind of haunt me or eat away at me. And so finally I said, you know what, enough. I took the phone when my children were napping, and I started calling Invention help companies. Actually, my sister had suggested, hey, that invention you were going to make, why don't you try? So I started calling, and I found a company that actually picked up the phone and spoke to me. I wasn't put through some directory, It just resonated with me in that moment. And I thought, you know what, this is who I'm going to work with. And they put the CEO on the phone, and I had a meeting booked, and that was the start.
Now, this is amazing to me because maybe number one, again, I think maybe we had mentioned it in passing, but you're from Canada and, to the north here. I'm in the Detroit metro area, so just a neighbor here to the south. So this is, starting a company that's outside of the U.S. and in Canada. So I guess this is interesting to me because, number one, it gives hope to not only moms out there, but moms having maybe 3, 4 or more kids, because you did this with 3 and 1 on the way. It's not like you said, it may have been a lot easier to do with just you or maybe you and 1 kid. But doing this with 3 little ones with the 4th one on the way, that, again, I think that's encouraging to moms out there, or to, even fathers out there that maybe have multiple kids, to say, hey, just because you have kids, that shouldn't stop the dream or stop the goal of kind of creating something. But also, and I'm kind of going to piggyback off this second point, you were a school teacher. So a lot of times people think that you have to be an engineer or some type of, a scientist or some type of, I guess, technical background, or have some type of technical background for you to kind of do this stuff. And it's just not true. With you being a teacher, was that maybe overwhelming at the beginning, or?
Well, I would say maybe, but teachers are problem solvers, and so are mothers. We do not like wasting time. We find the quickest solution. And so in many ways, that taught me how to, you're good at differentiating as well, at handling many things, multitasking. I mean, we can do that, right? And so that didn't intimidate me at all, because I knew the company I had found would take care of that aspect. I was, I guess, the brains and the motivation behind keeping the ball rolling to develop the product.
Nice. So then clearly you knew about bracelets from you wearing them and things like that. But again, seems like the background in education was on teaching, as being a school teacher. And oftentimes I find out from, again, just doing these interviews or just kind of dealing with this stuff on a day-to-day basis that the person, like what you guys are doing or the business that you're trying to get into, in this case, is different from what your background is in. I would imagine that you learned a ton about bracelets and clasp and different things as you went through the process.
Yes. And what other products existed. And there's a couple, but they work with the other end of the bracelet, of course. Clasp Magic works with the clasp, making it the complete solution. And the other products would hold the loop end, and you'd still have to manipulate one-handedly a tiny clasp under your fingernail to open it. So yeah, we did a bit of research, but quickly we found that there weren't many other products, and they worked with the opposite side. So I was good to go.
Okay, so then you have this interview, this interview or this sit down with the CEO of this company. Then what was the next steps after that for you? I know at least on the IP side of things, patents, that can be something that can happen or maybe should happen early on in a process, at least with maybe a provisional patent application, just to kind of hold your place in line and whatnot. But again, I think you had mentioned offline, we were talking about Kickstarter campaigns and things like that. So after that interview with the CEO of the company, what was the next steps for you in the process?
Okay, thanks. Well, they loved the product, loved the idea, and so they wanted to take me on board and start working with me. The first step was to build a design portfolio. Get the CAD drawings together. What does it look like? What pieces are going to be needed? And so all those little elements. I knew that I wanted it to look a certain shape. I wanted it to be small enough for travel. I knew that I also wanted to have a space underneath where you could keep a few silver bracelets, silver tarnishes out in the open air. So I knew that I needed that right away. So as soon as that first package was complete and we knew we had something that would work, that's when I applied for my patent. And then we moved forward into the technical and building the prototype and the meetings where we tested many, many, many clasps. And yeah, it was a funny day when we figured out how we would address the ring clasp. The ring clasp, the little lever is at about 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock. This clasp is not as common anymore.
Okay. It's
not as well made. It can bend, and if anything catches that little clasp, your bracelet can fall off anywhere. So the lobster clasps are the best clasp, but we still wanted to address this ring clasp. Yeah. And so we're trying to figure out, how to take one system, and then this is where the ring clasps go in. Yeah. So we turned it on its side so that it opens sideways.
Wow.
So that was an amazing meeting. It was actually the funny story. My husband came to that one meeting, and he was there in that moment, and he likes to take credit for that. But it was a fun moment. Then we knew we had all of the shapes and sizes.
Nice.
The lobster clasp was an easy fix. We figured out the size and shape quickly. But how to use the ring spring clasps was tricky, and then we solved it.
Nice. So then I guess, and maybe just going back just a slight bit, was it any type of confidentiality agreements between you and, I guess, the company that you were working with? Okay.
Sure. Okay. Right from the beginning, yes.
Sure.
Yes, their company, their business was to help you take your idea and work with you to develop it. So they've got a whole team working with you. They're not interested in taking your product and trying to do the expensive route of manufacturing it on their own.
Nice.
Initially before you start this process, or if you have an idea, you might think, oh my gosh, someone's going to take it. But then when you start working, probably that's not the case. There's a lot of work that goes, and a lot of costs actually that go into building and manufacturing prototypes, and then ultimately your product. So you're probably better off than you think you are.
So then I interviewed a gentleman, he's from Denmark, and he created a breathing device, AeroFit, and he talked about how the cream of the crop as it relates to market was the U.S. market. Obviously, he sells it in different countries in Europe. I think Germany is a big country in Europe where a lot of things are kind of bought and sold. But he talked about how still to this day, majority of their sales are here in the U.S. So he talked about the U.S. being kind of cream of the crop as far as market goes, which seems like that seems to be the case across the board when I talk to different companies that are abroad. So with that being said, when you went to go file the patent application, was it, okay, we're just going to file in Canada and then...
No, I went straight for the United States. That's where I wanted it. Well, fair enough. I mean, it was always going to be my biggest market, and it still is today. And I just thought I'm going to go for the big fish first. And I did. I do have my Canadian patent as well, but we went for the American one first. And I was pretty proud of actually getting this patent because it's a utility patent. And so my patent protects me for securing clasps in an open position.
Nice.
So
nice. No, and that's pretty. And then you also have some design patents, not only here in the U.S., but also in the U.K. What was that mindset as far as, okay, you have your Canadian utility patent, then you have your U.S. utility patent, you have a design patent here in the U.S. What made you say, okay, I'm going to go overseas to Europe to get the design patent as opposed to maybe kind of doing it in Canada or a different country?
My husband's English, so so that's why in the UK. And actually, my father-in-law at the time, he had been involved in some type of invention, and so he understood the process. So he was like, nice. Hey, maybe I can help you with that. Why not? So.
Nice. So you thought that was maybe better as opposed to a utility patent, say in Europe or somewhere?
Well, I'm actually struggling to remember. I actually think I couldn't get it. I believe there was a time from your initial applying in order to get the utility, and then I think that time maybe expired.
Yep. And
you can't get. Maybe it's changed, and maybe I was misinformed, but I believe you can't get a worldwide patent type idea. And I'll be honest, these things aren't cheap, and you have to pay for annual renewal fees. And and I wanted to do trademarks and logos. So it was just kind of the big fish, the country I live in.
For sure.
And then my husband's.
Got you. I like that strategy. You get, like you said, these things the cost can start to mount pretty quickly here. We're just talking about the utility patent. We're not talking about even design and trademarks and stuff like that. But yeah, to your point, I was actually doing a review video. Not sure if you know Joe Rogan. He has a podcast, Joe Rogan podcast, and I guess the actor Terrence Howard was on there, and he was kind of talking about how he had this worldwide patent, and I did a review video. Like, first off, there's no such thing as a worldwide patent.
I would have gotten that first.
Right. So did you file in the U.S.? Because what you do typically you can do a PCT application, which essentially holds your place in line for all those member states, China, India, different countries in Europe.
I don't know if that was offered to me or the cost at the time.
The cost is a little bit more.
Right. And this was, as you said, you keep yourself in line. It took about 2 years for this patent to be approved. And so we were just starting out. We hadn't even built the actual prototype. We had just the design, knowing, okay, now we know how to move forward. So at that time, I wanted to make sure I got the big fish, but I didn't think of that being the biggest priority. I was focused then on let's actually build the product.
For sure. No,
and a lot of moving parts,
No, and a lot of people, they don't realize. I've kind of talked to and dealt with a number of people who, when you filed that first application, in this case, I'm assuming it was in the U.S., you have a year to either file a PCT application or file within a particular country that you want to go in before you're barred from doing it. So I think maybe it seems like that's maybe what happened where you filed the U.S. case, and then you have a year to file either a PCT application, which gives you a little bit more time, but it is expensive, or you can file within different countries you want to go into. And after that year, then it's kind of like your SOL at that point as far as being able to file the application in different countries. And a lot of people, they don't know that. And Nightcap, which was it's actually a pretty cool spike drink prevention device, where it's a cap that kind of goes over your drink, and they have a big market here in the U.S., and they were doing a lot of cool things in Europe, but they didn't file a patent application. So you had all these infringers coming up because, again, once your product starts to be successful and sells a lot, then you will get the copycats. And unfortunately, they had missed that timeline, so they couldn't go after the infringers or secure protection in Europe, which they were pretty bummed about that. And they're still trying to find out, navigate that and find different ways to be able to protect it somehow, whether it's with a design patent or whatever the case may be. But yeah, that's definitely something, like you said, it's a lot of moving parts. And
and it was nice that I guess when my product was actually released, I didn't have to put patent pending. I was already patented. Yep. So nice. that timeline worked for me.
Nice. So then you talked about, okay, you filed the patent application. Now it's like, hey, let's get back to trying to kind of manufacture this thing, make this thing. And from my understanding, from talking to you offline, that process was a story or an adventure in and of itself. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Sure. So I ran a Kickstarter, and it was a successful Kickstarter. So I had, I guess you can say, my working prototype. I wanted to develop one more. I wanted to get just a little bit closer to 10 out of 10 before I went through and started manufacturing and then, tweaking, fine tuning. And so we got that prototype, and I think I tested it for maybe 3 hours. I had seen it for less than 24, and then it was to be sent off to a manufacturer in China because we were going to get quotes and see which company we'd work with. Okay. And I remember saying, well, it's a very expensive piece of equipment. What happens if it doesn't get to its destination? And it was, no, it's going to get there. It's going to be fine. Don't worry. And then, time's passed, and I'm kind of wondering, shouldn't I be hearing something about, should I be getting some quotes about, from these manufacturers? I think I'm supposed to be getting 3. And I kept pressing, and then it, unfortunately, the prototype just completely went missing in action, MIA. And then when I found that out, the room was spinning, absolutely spinning. I had to sit down. I remember to this day where I was in my life when we got this news, and yeah, absolute disaster.
Were you in Canada at that point, or were you?
I was taking one of my children to a gymnastics class.
Really?
And I'm sitting outside, and I'm like, the room's spinning. I'm like, oh my gosh, I better sit down. What do you mean you lost it?
Wow.
Yikes.
So then you worked through that, and it seems like
we fixed. I mean, these things can happen, and we were having another one rebuilt, so there wasn't a problem there. But there was a bit of a time. There was lost time, and I've done this Kickstarter, so I have a product I have to deliver within a certain timeline. So we kind of went ahead, working with a manufacturer that had reasonable pricing, and they went from CAD drawings and sent out their first version, their first rendition. And I remember opening the box and looking at my husband and saying, oh my gosh, like, I have to fix this. And within days, it was I had applied for a working visa to go into China. I was on a plane. I left my 4 children for the first time to fly to Shenzhen by myself. Actually, I flew into Hong Kong, and then the manufacturer, the liaison, he was in Hong Kong. So he took me over. We went on the speed train into Shenzhen. I was picked up in this fun, nice company car and taken through the actual manufacturing plant, which is absolutely fascinating. Seeing injection molding live is something else. And actually, it was surprising when they said not as many people as you think visit their manufacturer. They do it all remotely. I love being there. I thought, I've put a face to my name, and the way you're going to treat me in our working relationship is going to be a lot deeper now that you've seen me, you've met me. I know you. So
that's actually pretty interesting, and I hadn't thought about that. It's one thing to be emailing somebody, because I would imagine that, I'm not sure how often you're speaking to them over the phone, but just to put a face to a name is a lot more of a connection there and a bond there, to the point where when they do see an order or something like that come in from you, they're not just kind of, okay, I'll get to it when I get to it. This is, hey, Alison, who I remember coming all the way to China to kind of talk with me and kind of help me through the process. So that had to be good as far as from a connection standpoint. Was it terrifying? Because
it was, actually, because the man who I had dealt with for quite a bit of time before this and still talk to, he said, I have to go. I'm going upstairs. You have to walk alone underground. And I'm thinking, I'm about to walk through. I have no cell phone reception. Nobody actually knows exactly where I am. My husband's back in Canada with all of my children. And I felt really quite nervous, actually. I'm like, what if I get pulled over or something? Like, what if I get asked questions I can't answer? I'm just, yeah.
Why did he say you have to go underground?
Well, because just he had like a fast passer. He was also, I don't know if he was a Chinese resident, but he went back and forth all the time. So it was like when you arrive in a country where you have the passport for, you can just go in that special faster line. And I was, I had my working visa that needed to be checked. So I had to go in I had to enter the country a different way.
So then I was going to ask this because you think of, obviously, just like here in the U.S. or in Canada, you have multiple languages being spoken. In China, was it a fair amount of people, at least that you had to deal with, that spoke English, or was it?
Well, that's why this gentleman came with me, because they didn't speak any English.
Got you. So was he from Canada or he?
No, he's in Hong Kong.
Okay.
But speaks English, and he's so his English was pretty good, actually.
Nice.
But it was really fun because after I met the men and they showed me their manufacturing plans, and it was kind of also very nice from a female point of view to see that they followed all the guidelines and the employees were well treated. It just nice. It kind of I people have asked me, why did I manufacture there? And I said, well, I just cannot get my costs down here. Yeah, let's be realistic. Yeah. And so, but I visited where it's manufactured, and so I got to see everything. So it got my seal of approval. But at the end, after we'd gone through all the little fine details and they really understood what the product was to do, I left many bracelets with them, many different clasp types, and said, this is what you need to test. Yep. They took me out for dinner, and there they are showing me pictures of their children. I'm showing pictures of mine on the phone. So it was kind of really quite fun. A really great day, actually.
Nice. That seemed like it was definitely well worth the trip. Now, do you think you would have been able to work through things if you had not gone to China? Or
absolutely not.
Really?
No, I just the enthusiasm that I saw the manufacturers take, or how I was received. I knew that I was going to get it right. And being there and showing them how to work it instead of trying to send some videos here and there, right. It was just more authentic, and I knew I would get to where I needed to be. And actually, I would encourage everyone to, if you're manufacturing something, go to the place where it's being made. Yep. Make sure you're happy with things. Just build that relationship with. I mean, you're spending a lot of money. Yeah. We'll see.
Yeah, and I was going to say, it seems like based on, I guess, your experience and what you're saying, that everyone who's having their product manufactured, and whether it's China or Taiwan or a different country, they need to actually maybe go to the plant, just kind of meet the workers, see what's going on, and kind of build that connection or relationship with the people who are actually kind of doing things on the ground floor.
Right. Yeah, for sure.
Nice. So then, kind of moving along here, so you assuming that you get everything back, it's where it needs to be, and then you start selling this thing. So I guess, how was that like to actually have your first sale? Because it seemed like that would have had to be like exciting.
Well, the first thing I had to do actually was deliver all the Kickstarter products, right? Oh. So and the fun thing was, I mean, there were many abroad, but of course, your family and friends initially do get behind you. So the fun part was when my children would help. I'd be like, run that one in there. So they were all helping, and we delivered. That was the first step. We had to deliver all the pre-ordered products. But then, selling. The funny thing is, so after all this is said and done, you build your website, which also was a big undertaking. Yeah. First time. I mean, this is all new to me. As you said, my background is teaching. So now I'm building a website, and I'm making sure, I can receive sales. And it's funny, you build it and you think they will come, and it's like, well, where is everybody? That's the funny part. You think this is going to blow up. And then you're like, oh, we need to do some work here and enter marketing, which is also another new avenue.
So you're doing everything. I know it seems like you said that you were working with the company to help you manufacture it or kind of deal with the prototypes and get it to the point where, okay, you can work with a manufacturer to manufacture the product. But as far as that's, like I said, that's a whole different ballgame from marketing, from website, from all this stuff. And you're doing all this on your own.
Trade shows. Yeah. I'm doing this during nap times when my children have gone to bed. Well, because I had young children.
Yeah. So I was going to ask you, so did you not think, or maybe it was just kind of a financial situation at that point, a financial decision in terms of, I know some people hire like a marketing company or advertising company okay, you guys did?
Yeah, we did. And, these things come and go and change, but in the end, I actually do quite a bit myself. Depends. I mean, I'd say things might be right now a little bit on the slower side, but plans to pick up. Just it's a busy time in my life, and this is, not the only thing I do. It is definitely a priority, but one thing that was really cool was just through my own efforts, I got picked up by a lady in Japan. So actually, Class Magic is available in Japan as well. So she was quite interested in my product. She's a mother as well. She has her own jewelry business. So,
nice. That's sweet right there. So then I was going to ask you here. I know in the U.S. we have Shark Tank, and in Canada the version of Shark Tank is Dragon's Den. Did you ever think about going on?
I did, and I did try, and I don't know. I was kind of in that middle zone. They like the story. I think they would have liked the story, but it's a show. It's a business. Just from some of the things I know, I guess, are you really willing to take on the company, or do you want one that's almost already there and then you just take them the rest of the way? So I think I fell into the middle zone of not a company that's maybe one to have a little jibe at, a little jest with, but not blown up to the point where, we could jump in at the end there kind of thing. So no, I haven't done that.
Okay. No, and just from me kind of learning the ins and outs, even of Shark Tank here in the U.S., man, this thing, I spoke to people or interviewed people who applied to Shark Tank 7, 8, 9 times because they were getting rejected all those other times before. And then even to the extent that you do get a deal or a handshake on the show, it may not make it, whereas you both have signed agreements. So I'm learning all this stuff, and I'm like, wow, this is very interesting.
Yes. Well, if you start delving into that, you'll see that it's a fun TV show and series, but as a business step, maybe not always the best thing. And I mean, they get it wrong too. I mean, I know one product that I use every day with my girls. It's called the Tangle Teaser. I know that they had their product in the UK on, is it called something slightly different there?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, maybe they do have a shark.
So Dragons, no, we're Dragon's Den. Anyway, long story short, I don't think they got a deal, but then they blew up afterwards. Really? So I use their product. It's amazing.
And I think that if it's one thing that Shark Tank is good for, maybe two things. Number one is the publicity. I think regardless of whether you get a deal, whether they like the product or not, I don't necessarily kind of try to take that away from it because, like you said, they are going to get it wrong. I guess they're human, even though they have a lot of experience. But I think the publicity that you will get from being on the show, I think is definitely worthwhile. And then I do think, at least here in the U.S., the members or the Sharks, they do have a lot of experience. And sometimes I do find myself find it that they kind of give the person who's kind of pitching some pretty good advice, which I think is also maybe another good reason of maybe to go on the show, regardless of whether or not you actually get a deal or not. But I guess even then, I think a lot of people don't necessarily need a shark. I think they're doing positive cash flow and making money and things are trending upwards. You don't necessarily maybe need a shark. I know you maybe want to go kind of expedite the process of kind of really blowing up, but I guess sometimes I have to maybe answer to someone else, I have to kind of deal with that. Is maybe not the best thing for you or the business at that point. So
what you also realize, if you're not going with someone as big as a shark, perhaps, you find, I think I get emailed at least once a day by many companies that want to work with me. What is very challenging and very realistic, unless you have skin in the game, whether these companies actually bring you success is not their top concern as long as you're paying them monthly. So to find someone who really believes in your product the same way as you is definitely challenging. So, and actually I forgot to mention the biggest thing that challenged me after, I'd say probably 8 months of being online, was the pandemic did hit. And realistically, me as a mother, my priorities, it was just put a little bit on a back burner because I was all of a sudden, all my 4 children were at home learning. And of course, I'm part of that. And so we had a lot going on in the pandemic, actually.
I would say I could imagine, especially, but again, with the background as a teacher, that I would imagine that helped out being able to kind of teach them at home.
However, children are not as well behaved for their parents as they are for teachers. So I often said, if I took my, the neighbor's children and we swapped, that would have been great. But they were pretty good. But, difficult changing your bedroom to a classroom and then, you're just mom. So.
No, that's definitely a good point. And I think you also made another good point as it relates to just companies reaching out, trying to work with you, but maybe not necessarily a good fit, or you're not a top priority for them. I've definitely heard stories where people have kind of went with maybe one of those companies and it just turned out disastrous. Not saying that every situation is going to turn out like that, but definitely having to do the homework and making sure whoever you're partnering with, that they really believe in what it is that you're doing, maybe have some skin in the game, but you are one of their top priorities, and they're really looking to kind of see your situation through and kind of bring you as much success as possible. So I know we kind of talked a little bit about the challenges. Would you say kind of going to China and kind of trying to fix things, was that the biggest challenge, or was it another challenge out there that was maybe the biggest challenge for you in the business? I know you mentioned the pandemic as well. Were those maybe two of the kind of the top challenges, or is it another one in there that you?
I think, bringing the product to actual life. I described the feeling of paranoia, I guess. Someone's gonna. When I started the process, I wouldn't talk to anybody about what I was doing because I was very afraid that I would say, "Oh, hi, Susan. I'm doing this thing," and she'd say, "Oh, don't bother. My cousin's already doing that." I was afraid, not that someone was already maybe, a year ahead of me. Yep. So I had that paranoia. But then once I had the successful Kickstarter, it was, you've got to try and make a little bit of progress every day to bring this product to life. We were 80% there with that final prototype, but we needed to close that gap. And that's when I knew. And when as I said, I don't feel that the product would have ever been made as well as it is today had I not gone to China. So, when I think back to losing the prototype, it was actually a really amazing thing that happened in the end, because I would never, ever have gone at that point. And that was the time I needed to be there, when they were starting to work with me and building all my injection molding tools. And so that was the biggest challenge for sure.
And I was going to say, I guess that's part of a business. It seems like whether you're a startup or whatever stage you're on in the process, it seems like every company kind of goes through those ups and downs. So like you said, it ended up that challenge or issue ended up turning into a blessing in disguise because of what came out of it. I guess on the flip side of things, what would you say was the biggest breakthrough with, I guess, maybe the company, or kind of going through the process of kind of getting something to market? What was the biggest breakthrough?
Well, actually, I applied for a small business grant, actually. I think this was it was maybe 1 year after the pandemic had hit, and my children most of them were in school, if not all, at least half day. And so I worked with Holt in my local area for a small business owner grant. And actually, it was a lot of work. It was quite intensive, but I actually was a winner. So nice. I actually received a grant, and it helped me launch my final and color at this point, right in time for Mother's Day. So that was a really great breakthrough. And, to work at the time, I'm working with many different business owners. So, we all kind of stumbled into this. Whether I called myself a mompreneur or something else, we were all united in our goal to make our small business thrive and bigger. But there were only a few winners, and I was a proud winner of that grant. So that was
nice.
A big, yes. I mean, that's how I have my last and most newest model, as well as I believe I have a trademark in China as well.
Nice. So I was going to ask you this. I know a lot of times, sometimes with companies, they can be, I guess, a little antsy about maybe building a product line, maybe as opposed to, say, having one product. Have you thought about maybe, I guess, additional products? So I know.
Yes, I have. I have goals. I'm taking one step at a time, as I'm also, as I have to say again, I'm also in my busiest years as a mom. I have a 14-year-old, a 12-year-old, 11-year-old, and a 9-year-old. So that's a lot of work as well. But I do have plans to take the same mechanism and adapt it, change it slightly for a necklace helper as well.
Okay.
Believe it or not, my first idea was always the bracelet, because you lose one hand attaching it to yourself.
Yep.
However, many women struggle because you're putting the clasp behind your head. And if you've got nails that are too short or too long, you can't do it.
Right. And I was looking, if you could look at my notes, I was going to mention necklaces, because it seems like that's, whether you're a man or a woman, you will have that same issue trying to, tie the necklace. And especially if you're talking about having nails, that almost makes it even more, I guess, impossible at that point. So it seems like that is something that you maybe kind of come out with on the horizon, kind of this same kind of process, but for necklaces.
Right. Yeah. You just detach it in the front, but make it something a little bit more ergonomic, a little lighter perhaps.
Yep.
But it's so funny how many women I speak to are, when's the necklace version coming out?
No.
Yeah, well, we'll see. Hopefully.
And I did want to maybe talk about this before we get into the final few questions, because I had noticed that you have some charitable giving, some donations on your website, especially with Black Mamas Matter Alliance as well as Holiday Helpers. What, I guess, made you, want to do something along those lines? Because I think that's pretty cool.
Thanks. I am a mother first and foremost, and, I'm a woman who designed a product to help women. Yeah. So, giving back has always been inspirational to me, actually. Yeah. I'm going to go back to my first year of teaching. I had a lovely student who became quite special to me. She had leukemia. She relapsed, and I became quite close with the family. Spent her last days with me. I flew out to where her family was staying. Wow. And, when she saw me that time, she had said to me, I know I was her kindergarten teacher. So she says, I've changed what I want to be. I don't want to be a doctor anymore. I'm going to be a nurse, because they do more. And, from a child who's been in the hospital for half of her short life, she saw the nurses more. And we all know that the doctors are behind the scenes. But anyway, she said, I want to be a nurse. And I looked at her and I said, you're going to make a great nurse. And this is coming from, I know I think she lived 2 days after I said that to her. So, I grew up really quickly in that moment, and I realized, you only get one life. Yep. And I guess this idea resonated with me so greatly that I knew I could not live my life with regretting not having gone down this path, seeing just how fragile life is. And so that was a gift in that. I mean, you don't get to go back in life and wish you'd done something over. So yeah, I'm really, really glad I took this all on, even though it's been a journey.
Yeah, no, it's definitely been a journey. But again, I think to your point, even piggybacking off of that, they say a lot of people, we all have ideas. We all dealing with, I guess, issues, problems that we kind of go through our day-to-day life, trying to figure out or fix. And a lot of times we do get a chance to kind of produce solutions to these problems. And I like to encourage, I'm not sure if it's just the IP attorney, the patent attorney in me to, hey, if you solve the problem for yourself, other people are having these same issues. And try to get it out to the masses, or maybe at least start something around this and see where it goes. Like you said, we only get one life, and I guess they talk about, hey, if you want to go to a place where there's a lot of ideals, this unfortunately is the graveyard, because a lot of people kind of pass away with their ideals in their head without doing anything with them. And just, I guess for me, part of me doing this podcast as well is to try to get those people to kind of come out with their ideas, because like you said, we only get one life, and it's been a journey, but I would imagine that you wouldn't have traded this journey for anything. And I guess later on in life, I would rather, even if things didn't go as planned or whatever the case may be, I would rather have kind of gone through that journey and knew what it kind of produced, as opposed to saying, man, I wish I would have did this, not knowing whether or not it would have turned out good or bad. So at least that's my take on it.
Yeah, for sure. And many people through the company I worked with, I mean, I think I had someone just probably 3 weeks ago, they reach out to me. They find my name in the company website, and they ask, I've got this idea. Should I go for it? And I always say, yes, you should. I mean, you need to know the reality is it's expensive, but you can do a lot on your own. And that's what I think I learned when going to the manufacturer. Get yourself involved. Yep. Learn how to pack orders. Like just be in it as much as you can in the beginning. Know your business inside and out.
Nice.
But always go for it.
I agree with that. So I guess maybe my final two questions. Number one, what advice would you give? And maybe you just kind of said it, what you just said, as far as giving to an aspiring entrepreneur, someone who's maybe they're kind of looking to get into it, but something is holding them back for whatever reason. What advice would you give to those people who are aspiring to be entrepreneurs, such as yourself, or like yourselves?
Well, I would say absolutely go for it. At least have a conversation with a design firm and see what they think. They might say, you know what, that sounds like a good idea, but we're working with someone we've developed, or actually there's a lot of products, on their way to being developed. You don't know, maybe they love it like they loved mine, and they said, you know what, it is unique. So just start, give it a try, find somewhere where you can express and share your ideas and see what happens. Start the ball rolling somehow.
Nice. Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I know a lot of times, whether it's Shark Tank or otherwise, as a patent attorney, I've seen a ton of things, but you would be surprised. There's still a lot of things out there that is out there that you would think, man, that's new or that's novel. How did they get a patent on that? But it's possible if you have a difference that, hopefully makes things better to the point where kind of consumers want to buy into things like that. It may turn into something, but you would be surprised on kind of, even to your point earlier, where maybe talking to a girlfriend and they say, well, that's already been done, and not wanting to be, I guess, kind of not scared off, but let that affect you going forward in a process. You would be surprised on how much stuff or what you can get a patent on. And so it'd be good, like you said, talk to the design firm, maybe even talk to an attorney if it does make it, I guess, that far in the process, because I've gotten patents on things that I look back like, I'm not sure how that patent got allowed, but it got allowed. So
and like you said, maybe someone started something and abandoned it mid-process and didn't follow through. And patents do expire. You have to renew, or so maybe it's still worth trying.
Yep. No, absolutely. I definitely agree with that. And then I guess the last question is, how can people follow you and, most importantly, purchase the product?
Sure. Well, I have my own website, World Wide Web, classmagic.com. And I also have social media. You can follow me on there as well. So, but probably my main website is the best place to start.
Okay. And then I know sometimes people sell on like Amazon or other platforms aside.
Oh, I'm on Etsy as well at this point.
Okay.
I'm looking into some more very shortly, but so you can find me on Etsy or my own website.
Nice. Well, there it is. Alison has an amazing story, as you just heard, audience. Definitely go purchase the product. Go just check out the social media, see what she's been up to, and just kind of follow her. I'm definitely looking forward to the necklace version when she gets to it. But it was a great interview, and hopefully you guys had your pen and paper and taking notes, because she said a lot of great things. I know at some point I want to kind of jump into like the inventor side of things outside of just being an attorney. And one of the things that I will kind of take heed that she said was to go to China or go wherever the product is being made and really try to cultivate or develop that relationship with the manufacturers, because it seems like definitely that kind of, obviously in her case, worked out well, but it just kind of makes sense as she talked about it. So again, hopefully you guys got something from this interview. We'll see you guys next week. Take care.